Hidden Agenda, Hidden Motives, Episode 2, A Lucas Sinclair Mystery. Written by Delilah Moonbeam. Read by Silas. Chapter 1. Lucas Sinclair tugged at his collar, already regretting his decision to attend the campaign rally at City Hall Plaza. Hundreds of Ravenswood citizens gathered in the shadow of the imposing marble building. Campaign signs bobbed above the crowd like colorful buoys in a sea of expectation. "Stop fidgeting," Emily Carter said, nudging him with her elbow. "You look like you're about to bolt." "Because I am," Lucas muttered, scanning the crowd with habitual suspicion. "Remind me why we're here instead of closing the Harrison case?" Emily's green eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "Because this is history in the making. Daniel Parker is the first candidate in 20 years with a real shot at unseating Mayor Whitmore." Lucas grunted non-committally. In his experience, politicians were all cut from the same corrupt cloth, just with different tailors. Still, he had to admit there was something electric about the atmosphere as Daniel Parker took the stage. "Thank you, Ravenswood." Parker's voice boomed through the speakers. He looked every inch the rising political star in his navy suit and red tie, his clean-cut appearance and easy smile drawing enthusiastic applause. "For too long, our beautiful city has been run by those who serve special interests rather than the people." The crowd roared its approval, and Lucas noticed several of Whitmore's supporters shifting uncomfortably at the edges of the gathering. "Look at Mayor Whitmore's people," Emily whispered, following Lucas's gaze. "They're getting nervous." The incumbent mayor stood at the side of the stage, his practiced smile firmly in place, though his eyes were cold. James Whitmore had ruled Ravenswood for 3 terms, his silver hair and distinguished bearing lending him an air of authority that had served him well. But Parker was young, passionate, and untainted by scandal. At least so far. "The historic district redevelopment plan isn't about affordable housing as the mayor claims," Parker continued, his voice rising with conviction. "It's about lining the pockets of developers while displacing families who've lived there for generations." The crowd's reaction was immediate and divided. Cheers from Parker's supporters and angry mutters from Whitmore's camp. "He's hitting Whitmore where it hurts," Emily commented. Lucas nodded in agreement as he watched the interaction unfold on stage. The speech concluded, and the mandatory photo opportunity began. Parker and Whitmore approached each other for a handshake, cameras flashing to capture the moment. "Smile for the cameras, Councilman," Whitmore said, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Enjoy your moment while it lasts." Parker's smile never wavered as he gripped Whitmore's hand firmly. "The people deserve the truth, Mayor. I intend to give it to them." As the 2 candidates separated, Lucas noticed Parker scanning the crowd until his gaze landed on his aide. Alice Munro stood at the edge of the stage, clipboard in hand. What happened next was so subtle that Lucas nearly missed it. As Parker moved through the crowd, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries, he passed close to Alice. In a movement disguised by the crush of people, Parker slipped a small thumb drive into her hand. Alice's expression shifted momentarily, alarm flashing across her features before her professional mask slipped back into place. She pocketed the device quickly, her eyes darting around as if to see if anyone had noticed. Lucas had. "Did you see that?" he asked Emily, who was busy taking a selfie with the City Hall dome in the background. "See what?" she asked, checking her phone. "Parker just passed something to his aide." She looked spooked. Emily shrugged. "Probably just campaign materials. You're always looking for conspiracies." "Not conspiracies," Lucas corrected, his eyes still following Alice as she hurried away from the crowd. "Motives." Later that evening, Lucas sat in his apartment, case files spread across his coffee table as the television murmured in the background. The rally played on the local news, the anchors dissecting every word and gesture from both candidates. Lucas's pen twirled between his fingers. The apartment reflected his bachelor lifestyle. Functional furniture, minimal decoration, and a kitchen that showed little evidence of use. On the walls hung a few framed photographs of crime scenes, artistically shot in black and white. His attention drifted back to the television as the coverage showed Parker's passionate speech about the controversial housing development. Councilman Parker has made the historic district redevelopment the centerpiece of his campaign, the newscaster was saying, directly challenging Mayor Whitmore's signature project. The broadcast suddenly cut to a breaking news alert, the screen flashing red as the anchor's expression turned grave. "We interrupt our coverage to bring you breaking news. Sources within City Hall confirm that City Councilman Daniel Parker has been found dead in his office this evening. Details are still emerging, but authorities have been called to the scene. We'll bring you updates as this story develops." Lucas froze, the pen falling from his fingers. Before he could process the information, his phone rang. Chief Watson's name flashed on the screen. "Sinclair," he answered, already reaching for his jacket. "Get to Parker's office at City Hall, now." Chief Watson's voice was tense, clipped. "Media's already swarming. This is high profile, so watch your step." "On my way," Lucas replied, already moving toward the door. "Any details?" "Found by his aide, apparent homicide. And Sinclair." The chief paused. "The mayor's office has already called. They want this handled appropriately." "Whatever that means," Lucas grimaced. "Understood." He ended the call, grabbing his badge and gun. Political pressure was already mounting, and he hadn't even seen the body yet. This was exactly why he avoided politics. The truth always took a backseat to power. The Ravenswood Police Department was buzzing with activity when Lucas arrived. Officers huddled in small groups, their conversations hushed but intense. The death of a prominent political figure, a murder, no less, had energized the department with a mixture of professional focus and morbid excitement. Chief Christine Watson stood in the doorway of her office, her imposing figure commanding attention even amid the chaos. Her salt and pepper hair was pulled back severely, her expression grim as she spotted Lucas. "Sinclair, my office. Now." Lucas followed her inside, noting the tension in her shoulders as she closed the door behind them. "This is a powder keg," Watson said without preamble, gesturing for him to sit. She remained standing, pacing the small space. Parker was on the rise, directly challenging Whitmore. "The press will be all over this, and the mayor's already making noise about oversight." Lucas leaned forward. "What are they afraid of finding?" Watson gave him a sharp look. "Don't start with conspiracy theories. I need facts, not speculation." Parker was found in his office with a gunshot wound to the chest. His aide, Alice Monroe, discovered the body when she returned to pick up some files. "Alice Monroe," Lucas repeated, remembering the thumb drive exchange. "I saw her at the rally today. Parker passed her something, a thumb drive. She seemed nervous about it." Watson frowned. "Follow up on that, but tread carefully. The mayor's office has made it clear they want regular updates and appropriate handling of the investigation." "Meaning they want to control the narrative," Lucas translated. "Meaning solve this quickly and cleanly," Watson corrected, though her expression suggested she shared his concerns. "I want Carter to help you on this. She has good political instincts, and the two of you work well together." "She's also personally invested," Lucas pointed out. "Her father lost his pension in that scandal during Whitmore's first term." Watson's eyes narrowed. "All the more reason to keep her close and make sure this investigation stays by the book. I need your best work on this, Sinclair. No cutting corners, no lone wolf tactics." "Understood, Chief." As Lucas gathered his case materials, the door to the office opened, and Reed Turner poked his head in. The department's tech specialist looked as disheveled as always, his rumpled clothing and perpetual 5 o'clock shadow belying his sharp intelligence. "Sorry to interrupt," Reed said, fidgeting with a small electronic device in his hands. "Lucas, got a second?" Watson waved him in. "Make it quick, Turner." Reed stepped inside, lowering his voice. "I heard about Parker. There's something you should know. He contacted me last week, asking about digital security. Wanted to know if official city emails could be monitored." Lucas exchanged a glance with Watson. "What did you tell him?" "That anything on city servers is potentially accessible to IT administrators," Reed replied. He seemed concerned, said he needed to discuss something sensitive, but wanted to do it in person. "We were supposed to meet later this week." He paused, his expression somber. "Now we never will." "Did he give any indication what he was worried about?" Lucas asked. Reed shook his head, just that it involved the historic district development project. He mentioned financial irregularities, but wouldn't elaborate over the phone. "Follow up on this," Watson instructed Lucas. "And Turner, check Parker's emails, calls, anything that might point to motive." Reed nodded and slipped out, leaving Lucas alone with the chief. "I don't like this," Watson admitted once the door closed. "The timing is too convenient. Parker makes accusations about the development project, then turns up dead in his office." "I thought you didn't want conspiracy theories," Lucas reminded her with a raised eyebrow. Watson's expression hardened. "What I want is the truth, Sinclair. No matter who it implicates, just make sure you have solid evidence before pointing fingers." Lucas called Emily as he left the station, the night air cold against his face as he walked to his car. "Meet me at City Hall," he said when she answered. "Parker's dead." "I just saw the news," Emily replied, her voice tight. "Murder?" "Looks that way. Gunshot to the chest in his office. His aide found the body." "The same aide you saw him pass something to?" Lucas nodded, forgetting she couldn't see him. "Alice Monroe. And get this. Reed says Parker contacted him about digital security concerns related to the development project." Emily's sharp intake of breath was audible. "My father tried to blow the whistle on corruption in the permitting process for Whitmore's projects. Next thing he knew, he was fired and his pension was gone." Lucas slid into his car, starting the engine. "I remember. The official story was financial misconduct on your father's part." "It was a setup," Emily said bitterly. "Dad knew too much about how Whitmore's friends were getting special treatment. When he tried to speak up, they buried him." Lucas pulled away from the curb, his headlights cutting through the darkness. "That's why I avoid politics. The game is rigged from the start." "Not all politicians are corrupt," Emily argued. "Parker seemed different. He was pushing back against the development deal, saying it would displace longtime residents while enriching Whitmore's developer friends." "Everyone seems different until power's on the line," Lucas countered, thinking of cases he'd worked early in his career. "Remember that corruption investigation into Commissioner Harding? 3 officers came forward with evidence, all rock solid. Next thing we know, the case is buried. Harding retires with full benefits, and those officers are working traffic in the worst parts of town. So we just give up? Let the corrupt win?" Emily's voice was challenging. "This case matters, Lucas. If Parker was killed because he was threatening Whitmore's deals, we need to expose it." Lucas gripped the steering wheel tighter. "I'm not saying we don't investigate. I'm saying we watch our backs. This case has the potential to end careers, maybe even ours." The silence on the line lasted several seconds before Emily spoke again. "Some things are worth the risk." As he approached City Hall, Lucas could already see the news vans and the flashing lights of police cruisers. "I'll meet you at the front entrance," Emily said before hanging up. Lucas parked behind a police barricade, flashing his badge to the officer controlling access. As he approached the building, he spotted Emily waiting near the steps, her auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail, her expression grim. "Ready?" he asked as he reached her. "As I'll ever be," she replied. They walked up the steps together, but something caught Lucas's eye as they neared the entrance. Through the glass doors, he could see into the lobby. A familiar figure was already inside, Sharon Price, one of Ravenswood's most persistent investigative journalists. She was moving purposefully toward Parker's office, well ahead of the police securing the scene. "How did she get in here already?" Emily muttered, quickening her pace. Lucas watched as Sharon reached Parker's office, glancing furtively over her shoulder before slipping inside. Through the window in the office door, he could see her moving toward Parker's desk. In one smooth motion, she opened a drawer, removed something, and slipped it into her bag. "Did you see that?" Lucas grabbed Emily's arm, pointing. "She just took something from Parker's desk." Before Emily could respond, Sharon looked up, her eyes meeting Lucas's through the glass. For a split second, her expression registered alarm before her professional mask slipped back into place. She closed the drawer and straightened up, acting as if she'd done nothing wrong. "We need to stop her before she leaves," Lucas said, already moving forward. "Whatever she took might be evidence." But as they reached for the door, a flood of officers and crime scene technicians entered from another entrance, momentarily blocking their path. By the time they made it through, Sharon had disappeared into the growing crowd of officials, taking whatever she had found with her. "Damn it," Lucas muttered, scanning the hall for any sign of the journalist. "We need to get to Parker's office now." Emily nodded grimly. Let's focus on the crime scene first. We can deal with Sharon Price later. Lucas reluctantly agreed, clenching his jaw. Chapter 2. Lucas and Emily entered Parker's office. The unmistakable scent of gunpowder lingered in the air. Detective Sinclair, Dr. Trevor Lee, called from beside Parker's desk. The forensic pathologist's glasses reflected the harsh crime scene lights as he gestured them over. The office told its own story before they even reached the body. Papers scattered across the polished hardwood floor. A broken lamp lay in pieces near the door, and a bookshelf had been partially emptied, its contents strewn haphazardly. "Quite the struggle," Emily remarked, carefully stepping around the debris. Lucas took in the scene, or made to look like one. Daniel Parker sat slumped over his desk, his navy suit now stained dark with blood from a single gunshot wound to the chest. His expression was frozen in what looked like surprise rather than fear. Dr. Lee snapped off his gloves and approached them. His normally impassive face showed subtle signs of strain around the eyes. "Preliminary findings suggest death occurred between 8 and 10 p.m., he said without preamble. "Single gunshot wound to the chest, close range. The bullet appears to have pierced the heart, causing almost immediate death." "Any defensive wounds?" Lucas asked, circling the desk for a better view. "None that I can see," Lee replied. "No bruising on the knuckles, no skin under the fingernails. He didn't fight back." "Suggesting he knew his killer," Emily concluded. "Or was taken by surprise," Lee countered. "I'll know more after the autopsy." Lucas's attention shifted to a side table where a half-empty bottle of scotch stood beside two crystal glasses. He had company. He bent closer, examining one of the glasses. "Lipstick on this one. We'll run analysis on the residue," a nearby technician confirmed. "What about the weapon?" Emily asked, scanning the room. Dr. Lee shook his head. "No sign of it. The killer must have taken it with them." Lucas moved around the desk, noting every detail. His eyes fell on a framed photograph lying face down. He carefully lifted it with a gloved hand. Parker with his wife and two young children, all smiles at what appeared to be a recent vacation. "Someone deliberately placed this down," Lucas observed, setting it upright. Either Parker didn't want to look at his family while meeting his visitor, or the killer didn't want them watching. "Speaking of visitors," Emily said, gesturing toward a distraught young woman visible through the glass partition of a nearby conference room. "That's Alice Monroe, Parker's aide. She found the body." "Let's talk to her," Lucas replied. They made their way to the conference room where Alice Monroe sat hunched over, tissues crumpled in her trembling hands. Her blonde hair had escaped its professional bun, and her glasses sat askew on her tear-stained face. "Ms. Monroe," Lucas began, taking a seat across from her. "I'm Detective Sinclair, and this is Officer Carter. We need to ask you some questions about Councilman Parker." Alice looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. "I already told the officers what happened. I found him like that when I came back for the campaign materials for tomorrow. We'd like to hear it directly," Emily said gently, sitting beside Lucas. "Walk us through your evening." Alice took a shuddering breath. "I left around 7 p.m. after the rally. Daniel, Councilman Parker, said he needed to work late on the housing bill. It's going to vote next week, and he wanted to make sure the affordable housing provisions were ironclad." "The historic district redevelopment?" Lucas prompted. Alice nodded vigorously. "Yes, it's been the centerpiece of his campaign. While Mayor Whitmore's version would have essentially handed the neighborhood to luxury developers, Daniel's amendment ensures that 30% of units remain affordable and that current residents have first right of refusal." "That would cut into developer profits," Emily noted. "Exactly," Alice said, a flash of pride momentarily replacing her grief. Daniel wasn't afraid to challenge Whitmore's pro-developer stance. He believed Ravenswood should work for everyone, not just the wealthy. Lucas leaned forward. "When did you return to the office?" "Around 10:30 p.m. We have a major campaign event tomorrow, and I needed the updated speech and talking points." Her voice broke. "The door was unlocked. I called out, but there was no answer. Then I saw him." She dissolved into fresh tears. "Did Councilman Parker often work this late?" Lucas asked when she had composed herself. "Since announcing his candidacy, yes. He was committed to this city." She twisted the tissue in her hands. He was a good man, detective, the best I've ever worked for. Did he have any enemies? Emily asked. Beyond the normal political opposition? Alice gave a bitter laugh. Mayor Whitmore and his entire machine, the developers who stood to lose millions if Daniel's version of the bill passed. But actual enemies who would do this? She gestured vaguely toward the office. I don't know. What about his personal life? Lucas pressed. Any issues at home? Relationships that might have caused tension? No, Alice said firmly. He was devoted to his family. This was political, detective. It had to be. Lucas exchanged a glance with Emily before continuing. I saw Councilman Parker pass you something at the rally today. A thumb drive. What was on it? Alice's eyes widened in surprise. You saw that? I did. What was so important that he needed to be secretive about it? Alice hesitated. Financial records related to the development project. Daniel had concerns about where the money was flowing. He wanted me to keep a copy separate from his office in case... She trailed off, the implications of her unfinished sentence hanging heavily in the air. In case something happened to him, Lucas finished. Do you still have it? Before Alice could answer, a commotion in the hallway drew their attention. Mayor James Whitmore had arrived, flanked by aides and security. He moved with the practiced confidence of a seasoned politician, his silver hair immaculate despite the late hour, his expression a careful mask of somber concern. We'll continue this in a moment, Lucas told Alice, rising to intercept the mayor. Whitmore was already making his way toward Parker's office when Lucas stepped into his path. Mayor Whitmore, Lucas said, deliberately blocking his progress. This is an active crime scene. Whitmore's eyes narrowed momentarily before his political smile reasserted itself. Detective Sinclair, I understand. I just wanted to see for myself. This is a tragedy for our city. It certainly is, Lucas agreed, watching as Whitmore's gaze repeatedly drifted toward Parker's desk. We'll need to ask you some questions about your whereabouts this evening. The mayor's smile remained fixed, but his eyes hardened. Of course, detective. Transparency is essential at a time like this. I was at the Ravenswood Foundation fundraising dinner from 6 p.m. until about midnight. Dozens of witnesses can confirm my presence. The entire time? Emily asked, joining them. No breaks or absences. A flicker of annoyance crossed Whitmore's face. I stepped out briefly to take a few calls, campaign business, but I was visible to guests throughout the evening. What time were these calls? Lucas pressed. Between courses, Whitmore said smoothly. Perhaps around 8:30 to 10 p.m. My aide can provide the exact times from my schedule. He glanced at his watch. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to prepare a statement for the morning news. The public will want reassurance during this difficult time. Lucas noted the convenient gap in Whitmore's timeline, but let him leave without further questioning. They had established initial contact. A more thorough interview could wait until they had gathered more evidence. 90-minute gap, Emily murmured as Whitmore departed. Right in our time of death window. Convenient, Lucas replied, but he'd be smarter than to do it himself. Let's find Sharon Price. I want to know what she took from that desk. They didn't have to look far. The journalist stood in the hallway, dictating notes into her phone while observing the comings and goings from Parker's office. Her sharp eyes missed nothing, and she immediately registered their approach, straightening her stylish blazer as if preparing for battle. Detective Sinclair, she greeted him with professional detachment. Here to arrest the messenger? Here to recover stolen evidence, Lucas corrected. You were in Parker's office before police secured the scene. How did you get in, and what did you take from his desk? Sharon's confident expression faltered just slightly. I had a scheduled interview with Councilman Parker at 9 p.m. When I arrived, the door was locked, so I left. She gestured toward the office. I tried calling him, but I didn't receive an answer. This morning was when I heard about his death and came to check it out. And then help yourself to his personal effects, Emily added. I don't know what you're talking about, Sharon replied, but her hand instinctively moved toward her bag. We saw you, Miss Price. With that, Lucas said flatly. Through the window. You removed something from his desk drawer and put it in your bag. I'm going to need you to hand it over. A tense silence stretched between them before Sharon reluctantly reached into her bag and produced a small voice recorder, It's mine. I left it here during a previous interview and came to retrieve it. Lucas took the device, noting how her eyes darted toward Mayor Whitmore, who was speaking with the chief of police near the building's entrance. If it's yours, you won't mind us checking it for fingerprints and audio content. Sharon's professional composure slipped further. That would be a violation of journalistic privilege. There are sensitive interviews on there with confidential sources. Then you shouldn't have removed it from a crime scene, Lucas countered. This is now evidence in a homicide investigation. You can't. Sharon began. We can and will, Emily interrupted. Unless you'd prefer we arrest you for tampering with evidence and get a warrant for your entire apartment? Sharon's shoulders sagged slightly in defeat. Fine, but I want it noted that I'm surrendering it under protest. Duly noted, Lucas said, bagging the recorder. Now tell me about your relationship with Councilman Parker. Professional, Sharon answered quickly. I've been covering his campaign, particularly his opposition to Whitmore's development plans. And why would he schedule an interview at 9 p.m.? Emily asked skeptically. That was the only time he had available. He said he had something important to share about the development project, something that would change the race. Her expression grew somber. I guess we'll never know what that was. Lucas studied her face for signs of deception. Were you aware that Parker was concerned about digital security? That he believed city communications might be monitored? A flash of surprise crossed Sharon's features before she could hide it. No, but it doesn't surprise me. The politics in the city have always been dirty. One more question, Lucas said. Do you know what AM contingency might refer to? Sharon frowned in what appeared to be genuine confusion. No, is that relevant to his death? Lucas didn't answer, merely noting her reaction. We'll be in touch, Miss Price. Don't leave town. As Sharon walked away, Lucas turned to Emily. Let's finish with the scene and head back to the station. I want Reed to analyze that recorder immediately. They returned to Parker's office where the forensics team was completing their work. Anything new? Lucas asked the lead technician. Nothing obvious. No shell casings, no weapon. If it weren't for the body and the blood, you wouldn't know a murder happened here. The technician gestured toward the desk. We've photographed and cataloged everything. You can do your final walkthrough. Emily moved to the desk, examining the computer setup. Lucas, come look at this. He joined her, following her gaze to the docking station where several cables, power, external monitor, keyboard, remained connected. The laptop's missing, Emily said, but all the peripherals are still here. Someone took just the computer itself. Our killer was after information, Lucas concluded, scanning the rest of the desk. While Emily continued checking the computer setup, Lucas turned his attention to Parker's jacket, which hung neatly on a coat rack despite the apparent struggle in the office. He went through the pockets, finding a wallet, keys, and a small pocket calendar. Flipping through the calendar, he stopped on today's date, which had been circled in red ink. Below it, in Parker's handwriting, was a cryptic notation: Insurance policy activated, AM contingency. Lucas looked up, his mind racing. AM, Alice Monroe? Emily, he called, holding up the calendar. I think we need to have another conversation with Ms. Monroe. But before he could elaborate, Emily's phone buzzed with a message. Her expression grew serious as she read it. What is it? Lucas asked. Surveillance footage from the hallway, she replied, turning the screen toward him. Shows Alice Monroe returning to Parker's office at 9:30 p.m., an hour before she claimed to have found the body. Then leaving a few minutes later carrying what looks like a laptop bag that she didn't have earlier. She must have came back later to report the murder. Lucas looked from the phone to the pocket calendar in his hand. The meaning of AM contingency suddenly much clearer. Insurance policy activated, he repeated softly. Parker knew he was in danger, and he had a backup plan. After a moment, he continued. We need to find Alice immediately, he said, pocketing his phone. But Alice Monroe was nowhere to be found. She had managed to slip away during the brief time they had been viewing the surveillance footage. Despite multiple calls to her cell phone and a visit to her apartment, she had seemingly vanished. With the night growing late and leads running cold, Lucas and Emily reluctantly agreed to regroup in the morning with fresh eyes and additional resources. First thing tomorrow, we brief the chief and put out an APB on Alice," Lucas said as they parted ways outside the station. Chapter 3. The next morning, Lucas entered Chief Watson's office with coffee in hand and case notes tucked under his arm. Emily Carter followed close behind, her tablet displaying photos from the crime scene and the surveillance footage of Alice. Chief Christine Watson looked up from her desk, dark circles under her eyes betraying a sleepless night. "Close the door," she ordered. "Any sign of Alice Munro?" "Nothing yet," Lucas replied, settling into one of the chairs across from her desk. "We've got officers checking her known addresses and contacts, but we've uncovered some concerning connections that complicate this case." "Give me what you have so far," Watson said, leaning back in her chair. Emily tapped her tablet. "Daniel Parker, shot once in the chest between 8 and 10 p.m. No defensive wounds, suggesting he either knew his killer or was taken by surprise. 2 glasses on a side table, one with lipstick traces. His office showed signs of struggle," Lucas continued, "though it could have been staged. More importantly, we found a notation in Parker's calendar for yesterday. Insurance policy activated, AM contingency. I believe AM likely refers to Alice Munro, his aide." Watson's expression remained carefully neutral. "And what did she say when you spoke to her?" "She claims Parker gave her a thumb drive containing financial records related to the development project," Lucas explained. "He was worried about where the money was flowing." "The historic district redevelopment," Watson said, more statement than question. Emily nodded. Parker's version of the bill included significant affordable housing provisions that would cut into developer profits, directly opposing Mayor Whitmore's pro-developer stance. At the mention of Whitmore, Watson's posture stiffened slightly. "What about the mayor? I assume you've spoken to him?" "Briefly," Lucas said, watching her reaction carefully. "He was at a fundraising dinner last night, but admits to a 90-minute gap in his alibi, conveniently within our time of death window. Said he was taking campaign calls." Watson's fingers drummed a nervous pattern on her desk. "Anything else?" "2 more things," Lucas said. "First, Sharon Price, the journalist, was at the scene before police arrived. We caught her taking something from Parker's desk, a voice recorder she initially claimed was hers. And second," Emily added, "Parker's laptop is missing, but all cables and peripherals were still connected at his desk. And the surveillance shows Alice Munro leaving Parker's office with a laptop bag during the time of death window, which is definitely suspicious." Watson was silent for a moment, then sighed heavily. "I've already received 3 calls from the mayor's office this morning. They're concerned about the direction of the investigation." "Political pressure," Lucas said flatly. "Reality," Watson corrected. "I'm assigning additional officers to the case, but you need to tread carefully around City Hall. This isn't just about solving a murder anymore. It's a political minefield." Lucas leaned forward. "All due respect, Chief, but a man is dead, possibly because he threatened to expose corruption. Our job is to find his killer, not protect political careers." "Your job," Watson said firmly, "is to follow the evidence wherever it leads, but to do so by the book. No shortcuts, no assumptions, and no accusations without ironclad proof." "Understood?" "Understood," Lucas replied, though his jaw tightened. Watson nodded, dismissing them. "Keep me updated, hourly if possible." As they left the office, Emily glanced at Lucas. "She's feeling the heat already." "And passing it down to us," Lucas agreed. "Let's find Reed and see what he's made of that recorder." They found Reed in the department's tech lab. Surrounded by computer monitors and electronic equipment, his desk was covered in gadgets, tools, and empty energy drink cans. He looked up as they entered. His eyes sparkled with excitement despite his disheveled appearance. "Perfect timing," Reed said, gesturing them over. "I've been analyzing the voice recorder you recovered from Sharon Price. There's something interesting here." Lucas and Emily crowded around Reed's workstation as he pulled up an audio waveform on his screen. "First," Reed began, "this isn't Sharon's recorder as she claimed. I ran the serial number. It was purchased by the city council, specifically Parker's office, 3 months ago." "She lied," Emily said, exchanging a look with Lucas. Reed nodded. "And that's not all. There's a partially corrupted audio file from last night, recorded at approximately 8:15 p.m. based on the timestamp. He clicked play, and Parker's voice filled the room, tense and argumentative. Can't just ignore this. The numbers don't add up. 15 million allocated for community improvements that never materialized? Where did that money go? A second voice responded, distorted and unintelligible. I don't care who's involved, Parker continued. The public deserves to know the truth about. The recording cut off abruptly. That's it? Lucas asked. Reed shrugged. The rest is corrupted, either accidentally or deliberately. But here's the interesting part. He pointed to the waveform. Based on the audio profile, Parker was talking to a woman. Sharon? Emily suggested. Possibly, Reed replied. The pitch and timbre are consistent with a female voice, but the distortion makes identification impossible. Lucas paced the small lab. So we have Parker confronting someone about missing development funds at approximately 8:15 p.m., right at the beginning of our time of death window. And the recorder ends up in Sharon's possession, Emily added. I'm still working on recovering the corrupted portion, Reed said. Might take a while, though. Lucas nodded. Keep at it. In the meantime, we need to pay Mayor Whitmore a visit. Lucas and Emily made their way through security checkpoints at City Hall, their badges earning them grudging cooperation from the mayor's staff. Mayor Whitmore's office occupied the building's east wing, with panoramic views of the city he'd governed for 3 terms. The anteroom was decorated with photos of Whitmore shaking hands with important figures, cutting ribbons, and standing at podiums. They were kept waiting for 20 minutes before being escorted inside. Whitmore sat behind a massive oak desk, his silver hair perfectly styled, his expression one of practiced concern. Beside him stood Diane Morris, his legal counsel, her tailored suit and severe expression projecting authority. Detective Sinclair, Whitmore greeted them, gesturing to the chairs across from his desk. Officer Carter, what can I do for you today? Lucas remained standing. We have some follow-up questions about Councilman Parker's murder. Whitmore nodded solemnly. Of course, a terrible tragedy for our city. I've ordered flags at half-mast. You mentioned you were at the Ravenswood Foundation fundraiser last night, Lucas began, but stepped away for campaign calls between approximately 8:30 and 10 p.m. Can you provide more details about those calls? Morris stepped forward. Is there a reason you're focusing on the mayor's whereabouts, detective? Surely you don't consider him a suspect? We're interviewing everyone connected to Councilman Parker. Emily replied smoothly. Standard procedure, as I'm sure you're aware, Counselor. Whitmore smiled thinly. I have nothing to hide. I spoke with several campaign donors during that time. My assistant can provide you with the call log, though I must say this feels rather targeted. We're just following the evidence, Lucas said. Speaking of which, what can you tell us about the Historic District Redevelopment Project? The mayor's smile faltered slightly. It's the cornerstone of our urban renewal initiative. Creating modern housing while preserving the neighborhood's character. What does this have to do with Parker's death? We understand Councilman Parker had significant concerns about the financial aspects of the project, Lucas pressed. Specifically, funds allocated for community improvements that never materialized. Morris interrupted, her voice sharp. This line of questioning seems politically motivated, detective. The development project has undergone rigorous financial oversight. We have evidence suggesting otherwise, Emily countered. Councilman Parker was investigating potential kickbacks and financial irregularities before his death. Whitmore's facade cracked momentarily, a flash of anger crossing his features before his political mask slipped back into place. These are serious and unfounded allegations. Councilman Parker was a political opponent who often made dramatic claims without substance. So you weren't aware of his concerns? Lucas asked. I was aware he opposed my vision for the city's future, Whitmore replied. That's politics, but to suggest there's any connection between policy disagreements and his tragic death is irresponsible and potentially libelous. Morris placed a hand on the mayor's desk. I think we've entertained these insinuations long enough. Unless you have actual evidence linking the mayor to this crime, we have nothing further to discuss. Lucas held Whitmore's gaze for a long moment. We'll be in touch. Please don't leave town, Mr. Mayor. Whitmore's eyes hardened. I have a city to run, detective, and friends in every department of that city. Remember that. The threat hung in the air as Lucas and Emily turned to leave. In the hallway, Emily let out a frustrated breath. "He's scared." "And threatening," Lucas agreed. "The question is, what exactly is he hiding?" As they approached the elevators, a slight woman in her early 30s hurried toward them, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "Detective Sinclair?" she asked in a hushed voice. Lucas nodded. "Yes? I'm Melissa Parker, Daniel's secretary and cousin," she said, eyes darting toward the mayor's office. "Can we talk somewhere private?" Lucas led her to a quiet corner near the building's rear stairwell. "What can you tell us, Miss Parker?" Melissa twisted her hands anxiously. Daniel had been acting strangely these past few weeks. Paranoid almost. He switched to using a personal email for certain communications and increased security on his computer. "Did he tell you why?" Emily asked. "Not directly," Melissa replied, "but I overheard him talking to Alice. He said they needed an insurance policy if things went wrong, that they couldn't trust the official channels." Lucas exchanged a glance with Emily. "When was this?" "Last week," Melissa said. "There's something else. The day before yesterday, Daniel received a phone call that really upset him. I don't know who it was from, but afterward he locked himself in his office for over an hour. When he came out, he told me that if anything happened to him, I should tell the police to follow the money." "Follow the money," Lucas repeated. "Did he elaborate?" Melissa shook her head. "No, but he was researching property records for the historic district. Ownership chains, shell companies, that sort of thing. He seemed particularly interested in a company called Apex Development Group." "Apex," Emily noted, typing on her phone. "I'll look into it." "Thank you for coming forward," Lucas told Melissa. "This could be important. Is there anything else you can think of?" Melissa hesitated. "Just one thing. Daniel and that journalist Sharon Price. They were closer than people knew. She was here often, sometimes after hours. Their meetings seemed personal." Lucas nodded. "We'll follow up on that. If you think of anything else, call us immediately." He handed her his card. She took it, looking even more nervous. "Be careful, detective. Whatever Daniel found, it was big enough to get him killed." As Melissa hurried away, Emily turned to Lucas. "Looks like we need to have another chat with Sharon Price." The offices of the Ravenswood Chronicle occupied a century-old building downtown. Inside, the newsroom buzzed with activity. Reporters on phones, editors hunched over screens, the constant clatter of keyboards. They found Sharon Price at her desk, surrounded by stacks of files and notebooks. Her computer displayed property records for the historic district, eerily similar to what Melissa had described Parker researching. She looked up as they approached, her expression shifting from surprise to wariness. "Twice in 24 hours. I'm flattered, detective." "We have follow-up questions," Lucas said, pulling up a chair. "About your relationship with Councilman Parker." Sharon's professional composure wavered slightly. "I told you, it was." "Professional?" Emily interrupted. "We have witnesses who described your after-hours meetings as something more personal." Sharon sighed, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard, then lowered her voice to almost a whisper. "Fine. Daniel and I were involved. It started during my investigation into the development project and evolved from there." "Is that relevant to his murder?" "Potentially," Lucas said. "Especially since you lied about the voice recorder. It wasn't yours. It belonged to Parker's office." Color drained from Sharon's face. "I can explain." "Please do," Lucas replied coldly. Sharon leaned forward, lowering her voice further. "Daniel was gathering evidence of corruption. The development project is a massive scheme to funnel public funds into private hands. $15 million allocated for community improvements disappeared into offshore accounts linked to Mayor Whitmore's biggest donors." "And you were helping him investigate this?" Emily asked. Sharon nodded. "We were working on a major exposé. That's why we recorded conversations to document everything. Last night he told me he had concrete proof linking Whitmore directly to the scheme." "So you went to meet him?" Lucas pressed. "Yes," Sharon admitted. "But like I said before, I couldn't get a hold of him and left. When I found out he was dead, I panicked. I knew if anyone found the recorder, the story might die with him, so I took it." "What about your romantic involvement?" Emily asked. "How does that factor in?" Sharon's expression hardened. "It doesn't. Our relationship was separate from the investigation. But I'm not naive. I knew publishing this story would make powerful enemies. Now Daniel is dead, and the only copy of his evidence was on his laptop, which was missing when I retrieved the recorder. Lucas studied her face. You didn't think to mention any of this last night? I was in shock, Sharon said defensively, and frankly, I wasn't sure who to trust. For all I knew, whoever killed Daniel might have connections in the police department. A fair concern, Lucas conceded. What can you tell us about Apex Development Group? A flash of recognition crossed Sharon's features. It's the primary contractor for the Historic District project. On paper, it's owned by a consortium of investors, but Daniel believed it was a shell company concealing Whitmore's direct financial interest. Do you have proof of this? Emily asked. Sharon shook her head. Not conclusive proof. That's what Daniel was working on. He said he'd traced the ownership through 5 shell companies back to a trust with connections to Whitmore's former business partner. And this would give Whitmore motive to silence Parker, Lucas mused. Millions in motive, Sharon confirmed. But I don't think Whitmore would get his hands dirty directly. I'm sure he has people for that. Lucas stood. We'll need everything you have on Apex and the development project. And Sharon, no more lies. You withhold evidence again, I'll arrest you. Sharon's eyes flashed with defiance, but she nodded. I want whoever killed Daniel to pay, detective. I'll give you what I have. Chapter 4. A few hours later, Lucas glanced at his phone as the update from the patrol officer came through. We've got her. Spotted Alice Monroe at the Pinewood Motel on Route 20. Officer Grayson is keeping eyes on but maintaining distance, per your instructions. Emily looked up from the case files spread across her desk with a look of disgust. The Pinewood? I guess desperate times calls for desperate measures. Lucas grabbed his jacket. Let's go. I want to talk to her before she bolts again. The Pinewood Motel was a single-story relic from the 1970s that had seen better days. Peeling paint, flickering neon, and a parking lot full of potholes. The place was frequented by druggies and prostitutes, took cash, and didn't ask any questions or request ID. And it was very cheap. Perfect for someone looking to disappear. Officer Grayson nodded to them from his unmarked car as they pulled in beside him. Room 114, Grayson said. No movement since she went in. Lucas and Emily approached the door cautiously. Lucas rapped sharply with his knuckles. Alice Monroe? Ravenswood PD, open up. Silence stretched for several seconds before a timid voice responded. How do I know it's really the police? It's Detective Sinclair and Officer Carter. We met at Parker's office yesterday. We need to talk about the laptop you took. More silence. Then, the sound of a security chain sliding free. The door opened a crack, revealing Alice's pale face, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. I didn't kill him, she said immediately. Then you need to explain why you lied about when you found the body, Emily replied, and why you took evidence from a crime scene. Alice glanced nervously at the parking lot before opening the door wider. Come in, please. The motel room was poorly furnished, a sagging queen bed, a small table with 2 chairs, and a TV that had seen better days. A laptop, presumably Parker's, sat on the table beside a half-eaten sandwich. Start talking, Lucas said, nodding toward the laptop. The surveillance footage shows you at Parker's office during our estimated time of death window, then leaving with his computer. That doesn't look good for you, Alice. Alice sank onto the edge of the bed, her shoulders slumping. I know how it looks, but I swear I didn't kill Daniel. She wiped away a tear. I was trying to protect him, or at least what he had worked for. Protect him? Emily's tone was skeptical. He was already dead when you took the laptop. No, not protect him physically. Protect his work, his legacy. Alice looked up with watery eyes. You don't understand what Daniel discovered, what he was risking everything to expose. Lucas pulled out one of the chairs and sat down across from her. Then help us understand. What was on this laptop that was worth tampering with a crime scene? Alice hesitated, then stood and retrieved the computer. Evidence. Documentation of corruption that goes all the way to the top. The Historic District redevelopment isn't just a policy disagreement between Daniel and Mayor Whitmore. It's a massive fraud. Millions of dollars being funneled through shell companies directly into the pockets of Whitmore and his developer friends. She opened the laptop, but a password prompt appeared on screen. I can't access everything. Daniel had multiple layers of security. That's why I took it. I was afraid whoever killed him would destroy the evidence before the police found it. So why not bring it to us immediately? Lucas asked. Alice's eyes dropped. I panicked. When I found Daniel, I couldn't think straight. All I could hear was his voice in my head saying if anything ever happened to him, I needed to secure the insurance policy. She gestured to the laptop. This is it. All the proof that could bring down Whitmore's entire operation. Emily crossed her arms. And the AM contingency in his calendar, that was you? Alice nodded. We had a plan. If Daniel ever disappeared, or if anything happened to him, I was supposed to secure his evidence and take it to people we could trust. She looked directly at Lucas. I've had time to think clearly, and I know I need to turn this over to you. Lucas studied her face. You and Parker must have been close for him to trust you with something this dangerous. We were, Alice said softly. We grew up together in the historic district. My family still lives there. They'd be displaced by Whitmore's version of the development. For Daniel, this wasn't just politics. It was personal. Emily glanced at Lucas. We should get Reed to look at this right away. Lucas nodded, standing. Alice Monroe, you're coming with us to the station. You're not under arrest at this time, but you need to give your statement, and we have more questions that need answers. I understand, Alice said, gathering her few belongings. I want to help. Daniel deserved better than this. At the Ravenswood Police Department, Reed Turner hunched over Parker's laptop as lines of code scrolled on the screen, while Lucas, Emily, and Alice watched from behind. This is some serious encryption, Reed muttered. Parker wasn't taking any chances. Can you break it? Lucas asked. Reed shot him an offended look. Can I break it? Please, the question is how long it'll take. He turned back to the screen. He's got multiple security layers. Standard password protection, then file-level encryption, plus... He trailed off, his expression shifting to impressed surprise. Well, that's clever. What is it? Emily leaned closer. He set up a dead man's switch, Reed explained, pointing to a program running in the background. It's an automated system designed to send specific files to predetermined recipients if Parker doesn't enter a passcode every 24 hours. Like a digital insurance policy, Lucas said. If anything happened to him, the evidence would automatically go public. Reed nodded. Exactly, and based on the timestamps, it activated shortly after our estimated time of death. He frowned, typing rapidly. But something went wrong. The emails never sent. After another 20 minutes of intense concentration, Reed let out a triumphant aha as new windows began opening on the screen. Got it. The system tried to send the files, but there was a connection error with City Hall's servers. Their IT department had scheduled maintenance that night. Might be coincidence, might not. Can you recover what the system was trying to send? Lucas asked. Already on it, Reed replied, clicking through folders. Here we go. Financial records, property transfers, emails. This is gold, Lucas. Pure gold. He pulled up a document showing a list of shell companies. Parker traced the ownership of Apex Development Group through 5 shell companies to a trust controlled by Whitmore's former business partner, Victor Lester. Emily whistled softly. That's a direct link. Reed nodded, opening another file. And here's the smoking gun. Emails authorizing fund transfers from the city's redevelopment account to these shell companies. $15 million allocated for community improvements that never materialized. That's what Daniel was trying to expose, Alice said, her voice tight with emotion. Whitmore was stealing public funds while displacing families who've lived in that neighborhood for generations, families like mine. Lucas studied the documents, his jaw clenched. So Parker threatens to expose the scheme and ends up dead in his office. Pretty convenient timing for Whitmore. There's more, Reed said, opening another folder. Parker kept detailed notes on his meetings with various players. He suspected someone close to him was feeding information to Whitmore's camp. Who? Emily asked. Reed scrolled through the notes. He doesn't specify, but he mentions concerns about Sharon Price's true motivations. Sharon? Lucas exchanged a look with Emily. She claimed she was working with Parker on the exposé. Reed pulled up a spreadsheet. Well, according to this, a company called Price Solutions received substantial payments from Apex Development around key voting dates for the project. He opened another window. I cross-referenced with business registrations. Price Solutions is owned by James Price. Any relation to Sharon? Lucas asked. Reed nodded grimly. Her brother, according to social media profiles. Emily's eyebrows shot up. So Sharon's brother was taking payments from the same developers she was supposedly investigating with Parker? That's a hell of a conflict of interest. And something she conveniently failed to mention during questioning. Lucas added. Alice looked stricken. Daniel trusted her. He thought they were building the case together. Lucas's phone rang, displaying Dr. Lee's number. Sinclair, he answered, putting the call on speaker. Detective, I have the toxicology results from Parker's autopsy. Lee's precise voice came through. There's something you should know. Parker had high levels of temazepam in his system, a prescription sedative used for anxiety and insomnia. The dose was significantly higher than therapeutic levels. He was drugged, Lucas concluded. Yes, enough to severely impair his coordination and awareness, but not enough to cause unconsciousness. It explains the lack of defensive wounds. He would have been incapable of effectively fighting off an attack. Did Parker have a prescription for this medication? Emily asked. Yes, but at a much lower dosage, Lee replied. Someone either gave him multiple pills or concentrated the drug in a liquid. Given the alcohol found in his system, I'd bet on the latter. Thanks, Doc. Send the full report to my email, Lucas said, before ending the call. He turned to Alice. Did Parker regularly take medication for anxiety? She nodded. He had a prescription. The campaign was stressful, and lately he'd been even more on edge with the threats. Where did he keep his medication? Emily asked. In his desk drawer at the office. He didn't like people knowing he needed it, thought it might be perceived as weakness. Lucas pulled out his phone again. We need to talk to Melissa Parker again. She might have seen something. 20 minutes later, Melissa Parker sat nervously in an interview room, twisting a tissue between her fingers. I don't understand why you're asking about Daniel's medication, she said, her voice small. The autopsy shows he was drugged before he was killed, Emily explained gently. Someone used his own medication against him. Melissa's eyes widened. That's horrible. We need to know if you saw anyone accessing his desk drawer where he kept his pills, Lucas said. Melissa hesitated, then nodded slowly. Actually, yes. Sharon Price was at his desk that afternoon. I thought she was just looking for a pen or something. Daniel had stepped out for a meeting. Sharon was going through his desk drawer, Lucas pressed. The same day he was killed? Yes, Melissa confirmed. Around 3 p.m. I didn't think anything of it at the time. She and Daniel were close. She was always in and out of his office. Emily leaned forward. Did she take anything from the drawer? Melissa frowned, trying to remember. I'm not sure. I was on the phone when I noticed her. By the time I finished the call, she was gone. Lucas and Emily exchanged a look. Thank you, Melissa, Lucas said, standing. You've been very helpful. As they left the interview room, Emily pulled Lucas aside. Sharon had access to his medication. Her brother was taking payments from the developers, and she was the last one to see Parker alive, according to her own statement. And she conveniently took the voice recorder from the crime scene, Lucas added. We need to bring her in for questioning. Emily nodded. I'll call it in. They hurried back to the tech lab where Reed was still analyzing Parker's files. He looked up as they entered, his expression grim. You need to see this, he said without preamble. I've been checking the metadata on key documents from Parker's evidence cache. Several critical files were accessed and modified after Parker's estimated time of death. Someone tampered with the evidence? Lucas asked. Reed nodded. And I traced the access. These files were opened from a computer registered to Sharon Price at the Ravenswood Chronicle at 11:43 p.m., well after Parker was dead. Lucas felt his phone vibrate. A text from Officer Grayson. No response at S. Price's apartment. Door unlocked. Signs of struggle. We need to get to Sharon's place now, Lucas said, already moving toward the door. Sharon Price's apartment was on the 3rd floor of a renovated factory building downtown. The door was slightly ajar when Lucas and Emily arrived. Officer Grayson stood guard outside waiting for backup. Ravenswood police, Lucas called out as they approached the door, weapons at the ready, and pushed the door open wider. Sharon Price? No response. They entered cautiously, taking in the chaos before them. The apartment had been thoroughly ransacked, furniture overturned, papers scattered, drawers emptied onto the floor. "Clear the rooms," Lucas instructed. They moved efficiently through the space, confirming no one was present. In the bedroom, Emily found a half-packed suitcase on the bed. "Looks like she was planning to run." Lucas examined the living room, noting the smashed laptop on the floor. "Someone got here before us. Question is, were they looking for something specific or just sending a message?" As he turned toward the hallway, he froze. Across the far wall, spray-painted in garish red letters, was a chilling message. "Traitors die next. Emily," he called. She appeared from the bedroom, her eyes widening as she saw the threatening message. "Is that blood or paint?" she asked, moving closer. Lucas examined it without touching. "Paint, I think. But the message is clear enough." He surveyed the ransacked apartment again. "Sharon's in the wind. Either she ran, or someone took her," Emily finished grimly. "Call it in," Lucas instructed. "We need CSU here now, and put out an APB on Sharon Price. Consider her both a suspect and a potential victim." As Emily made the call, Lucas knelt to examine the broken laptop. The hard drive had been physically removed. Someone didn't want them accessing whatever was on it. Chapter 5. Lucas stared at the broken laptop on Sharon Price's floor and the ominous red message spray-painted on the wall. "CSU is on the way," Emily said, pocketing her phone. "Should take about 20 minutes. "Let's get back to the station," Lucas replied. "Reed might have found something more in Parker's files by now." After instructing Grayson to keep watch, they drove back to the station in silence, both processing the implications of Sharon's ransacked apartment and her sudden disappearance. The Ravenswood Police Department was already buzzing with activity when they arrived. Reed was still hunched over his computer when they entered the tech lab. "Tell me you've got something," Lucas said. Reed looked up, his eyes bloodshot but triumphant. "Oh, I've got something all right. I've been digging deeper into Parker's files, and the rabbit hole just keeps going." He pulled up a diagram on his screen. The lead developer on the historic district project, Apex Development Group, isn't just connected to Whitmore's donors, it also received funding from Parker's campaign contributors. "Wait, what?" Emily moved closer to the screen. "Parker was publicly fighting against the development." "Exactly," Reed said, clicking through to additional documents. "But get this, the initial paperwork approving Apex's bid was fast-tracked through the Planning Commission using Parker's authorization codes, and the timestamp shows it happened 3 months after he started his public campaign against the project." Lucas frowned. So Parker was playing both sides, publicly opposing the development while secretly helping it move forward? "Maybe," Reed replied. "Or someone used his access credentials without his knowledge. Either way, it doesn't look good. Could explain why he was so paranoid about digital security," Emily noted. "If he discovered someone had accessed his accounts, he might have realized he was being set up." Lucas nodded. "What about Sharon Price? Any connection beyond her brother's company?" "Still digging," Reed said, turning back to his keyboard. "But I did find several encrypted emails between Parker and Sharon that I'm working on cracking. The file names suggest they contain audio recordings." "Keep at it," Lucas said. "We need to get back to Sharon's apartment before the crime scene is contaminated." When they returned to Sharon's place, the crime scene unit was already processing the apartment. Lucas pulled the lead technician aside. "What have you found?" "Not much beyond what you reported," the technician replied. "Fingerprints everywhere, but that's to be expected since it's her apartment. No signs of blood or physical struggle, despite the mess. Whoever did this may have been looking for something specific." "Any hidden compartments, safes, anything like that?" Lucas asked. The technician shook his head. "Not that we've found yet, but we haven't pulled apart every wall." Lucas turned to Emily. "If you were hiding something that could get you killed, where would you put it?" Emily glanced around the apartment thoughtfully. "Somewhere nobody would think to look, but somewhere I could access quickly if needed." Her eyes settled on the heating vent near the floor in the living room. "Like there." They moved to the vent, and Lucas knelt to examine it. The screws looked recently disturbed, with faint scratch marks around them. "Get me a screwdriver," he called to one of the CSU techs. A few moments later, the vent cover came away to reveal a small cavity behind it. Inside was a ziplocked plastic bag containing a flash drive and a small notebook with handwritten notes. "Bingo," Lucas said, carefully extracting the items with gloved hands and handing the flash drives over to the technician. "Bag these and get them to read immediately." While the technician processed the new evidence, Lucas flipped through Sharon's notebook. Most entries were written in some kind of shorthand, but certain names stood out: Parker, Whitmore, Apex, and repeatedly, JP. Likely James Price, her brother. In a nearby closet, Emily found a photo album hidden beneath a stack of winter sweaters. "Lucas, look at this." The album contained surveillance-style photos of both Parker and Whitmore, many taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. But what caught their attention were several images of Sharon herself meeting with Mayor Whitmore in what appeared to be a secluded park bench, a restaurant private room, and once in a parked car, meetings she had never disclosed during questioning. "She was playing both sides," Emily said, her voice hardening, getting close to Parker while feeding information to Whitmore. Lucas studied the photos. Or being blackmailed by him. Look at her body language. Tense, defensive. These don't look like friendly meetings. They spent another hour searching the apartment before returning to the station, where Reed was already analyzing the flash drive they'd recovered. "It's a treasure trove," he announced as they entered his lab. The drive contains recorded conversations between Parker and Whitmore discussing the development project. Some are pretty heated. He played a clip, and Whitmore's distinctive voice filled the room. "You're making a mistake, Daniel. This project goes forward with or without your support. The only question is whether you want to benefit from it or be destroyed by it." Parker responded, his voice tense. "Is that a threat, James?" "It's reality. You know how this city works. Don't pretend otherwise." Reed paused the playback. "There are several more like this, but some of the files are corrupted, professionally corrupted, I might add. Someone with technical skills deliberately damaged specific sections." "Can you recover them?" Lucas asked. Reed shrugged. "I'm trying, but no promises. Whoever did this knew what they were doing." Emily's phone buzzed with a notification. "Just got the warrant for James Price's financial records." She scanned the message. The prosecutor fast-tracked it, given the connection to a homicide. "Let's pay him a visit," Lucas suggested. James Price's consulting firm operated out of a small office above a dry cleaner in a nondescript commercial building. The door was locked when they arrived, with a handwritten sign reading, "By appointment only." "Not exactly the thriving business hub his bank accounts would suggest," Emily remarked as Lucas knocked loudly. After receiving no response, they used the warrant to convince the building manager to unlock the door. Inside, they found little more than a desk, a filing cabinet, and a computer. The space looked barely used, with a thin layer of dust on most surfaces. "Shell company, just like Reed suspected," Lucas said, examining the sparse furnishings. "I doubt any actual consulting happens here." Emily booted up the computer. No password protection. Sloppy for someone running a shady operation. They spent the next hour going through digital and physical files, finding little beyond basic incorporation documents and generic business templates. The financial records, however, told a different story. Regular payments from Apex Development had been coming in for months, disguised as consulting fees, but with no corresponding deliverables or services documented. "Look at this," Emily said, pointing to a bank statement. $100,000 deposit the day after Parker's murder, then an immediate transfer to an offshore account. She took photos of the documents with her phone and sent them to Reed. Within minutes, he called back. "I traced that offshore account," Reed said excitedly. "It's registered to a holding company in the Cayman Islands, but the beneficial owner is linked to Apex Development. It's essentially money going from one pocket to another, with James Price as the middleman." "Payment for services rendered," Lucas muttered. But what exactly was he being paid for? Back at the station, they found Chief Watson waiting for them, her expression grave. She beckoned them into her office and closed the door. "The mayor's office has been calling all morning," she said without preamble. "They're pushing hard for us to focus on Alice Monroe as our primary suspect." Lucas frowned. "Based on what evidence?" They claim her family's interest in stopping the development gives her a clear motive, Watson replied. And her actions after finding the body, taking the laptop instead of reporting the murder immediately, show consciousness of guilt. That's circumstantial at best, Emily argued. We have far stronger connections between Whitmore, the Price siblings, and the development project. Watson held up a hand. I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm saying there's significant political pressure being applied. The district attorney herself is coming here to review our evidence. As if on cue, a knock came at the door, and Catherine Chen, Ravenswood's district attorney, entered the room. Impeccably dressed in a tailored burgundy suit, Chen carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being the most powerful person in any room. Chief Watson? She nodded, then turned to Lucas and Emily. Detective officer, I understand you're making progress on the Parker homicide. We are, Lucas confirmed, watching her carefully. Chen had a reputation for political independence, but she wasn't immune to the realities of Ravenswood politics. I'd like to see what you have so far, Chen said, placing her briefcase on Watson's desk. For the next hour, they presented their evidence. The timeline, Parker's laptop contents, the connections between Whitmore and the developers, Sharon's deception, and her brother's suspicious payments. Chen listened attentively, occasionally asking questions. When they finished, she was silent for a long moment. Compelling, she finally said, but not quite enough for an indictment against anyone in the mayor's office. You've established motive and opportunity, but we need more direct evidence linking Whitmore or his associates to Parker's murder. What about Sharon Price? Lucas asked. The evidence points to her involvement, possibly in coordination with Whitmore. Find her, Chen replied simply. And find something that directly ties either of them to the killing. Until then, we need to pursue all leads, including Alice Monroe. After Chen left, Lucas couldn't hide his frustration. She's covering her bases, won't move against Whitmore without ironclad evidence. Can you blame her? Watson asked. Going after the mayor is political suicide unless the case is airtight. Keep digging. If there's evidence to be found, I trust you'll find it. They returned to the evidence room, where the items from Sharon's apartment had been cataloged and processed. Lucas examined photos of the scene while Emily reviewed Alice's statement again. I'm still not convinced Alice is telling us everything, Lucas said, examining additional surveillance footage that Reed had just sent over. We already know she was at Parker's office at 9:30 p.m. taking the laptop, but look at this. He pointed to his tablet screen, showing a different camera angle from City Hall's rear security entrance. This footage shows Alice entering through the back door at 7:30 p.m., just before our established murder window of 8 to 10 p.m. Emily leaned in to study the timestamp. So she was in the building right before Parker was killed, then came back later for the laptop? That completely contradicts her statement. Exactly, Lucas replied. She claimed she was at campaign headquarters all evening until she went to check on Parker around 10:30. She never mentioned being in City Hall at 7:30, right before Parker was murdered. So either she witnessed something she's not telling us, Emily began, or she was somehow involved, Lucas finished. Let's head to campaign headquarters. We need to find her now. Parker's campaign office was still operating, though a somber mood hung over the volunteers and staffers. The campaign manager, a harried-looking man named Paul Stevens, met them at the door. Detectives, how can I help? We're looking for Alice Monroe, Lucas explained. Is she here? Stevens shook his head. She was earlier, but she left suddenly about 20 minutes ago. Seemed upset after taking a phone call. Did you overhear any of the conversation? Emily asked. No, but she went pale like she'd seen a ghost, grabbed her purse and practically ran out the door, said something about needing to check on something important. Lucas and Emily made their way to Alice's desk, a neat workspace with color-coded folders and a framed photo of her with Parker at a campaign event. While Emily checked the drawers, Lucas noticed the trash can beside the desk. Inside were strips of paper, a shredded document that someone had attempted to piece back together before abandoning the effort. Carefully, he gathered the fragments and laid them out on Alice's desk. With Emily's help, they managed to reconstruct portions of what appeared to be a blackmail document. One fragment showed a photo of Parker and Sharon in an intimate embrace. Another contained financial figures matching those from the development project. Most disturbing was a partially visible handwritten note at the bottom. Either the bill dies, or you do. This changes everything, Lucas said, photographing the reconstructed document. Alice knew about Parker and Sharon's relationship, and someone was using it as leverage. But who was blackmailing whom? Emily wondered. Was Parker being threatened to withdraw his opposition to the development, or was Alice being pressured to get Parker to back down? Lucas carefully gathered the shredded pieces as evidence. There's one person who can answer that question. Alice, Emily agreed. But where would she go? Lucas thought for a moment, remembering what Alice had said in her statement about her personal connection to the historic district. She mentioned her family still lives in the area targeted for redevelopment. That's where she'd go if she felt threatened or needed to protect something important. As they hurried out of the campaign office, Lucas's phone rang. It was Reed. I finally cracked those encrypted emails between Parker and Sharon. Reed said, his voice tense. Lucas, you need to see this right away. It's not what we thought. None of this is what we thought. What did you find? Lucas asked, quickening his pace toward the car. Parker was being set up from the beginning, Reed replied. And I think I know who killed him. The problem is, they might be about to kill again. Chapter 6. Lucas accelerated through a yellow light in his rush to get to the historic district. Emily checked her weapon as Lucas took a sharp turn. Reed's voice came through the speakerphone. I've pinged her cell. She's at the model home on Oakwood Street. It's supposed to be unoccupied. What did you find in those emails, Reed? Lucas asked, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Parker discovered Whitmore was getting kickbacks through shell companies, but Sharon was feeding information to both sides while building her career-making story. The emails show Parker realized she was double-crossing him and planned to expose her. That's motive, Emily said. We'll update you when we get to Alice. The historic district was a study in contrasts: beautiful Victorian homes next to boarded-up buildings, community gardens beside empty lots. The model home stood apart from the occupied residences, a modern structure with large windows and a future home of Apex luxury condominiums sign out front. Yellow caution tape fluttered in the evening breeze, but there were no construction workers at this hour. Lucas pulled up a block away, cutting the headlights. See anything? Emily scanned the building. Second floor, east window. Movement. They approached cautiously, weapons drawn. The front door was secured with a padlock, but the back entrance showed signs of forced entry. The door frame splintered near the lock. Police! Lucas called out as they entered. Alice Monroe? Silence greeted them, but the creaking of floorboards upstairs gave away someone's presence. They moved carefully through the half-finished interior, past paint cans and construction materials. At the top of the stairs they paused, hearing a frantic scraping sound from one of the rooms. Lucas gestured silently, and they flanked the doorway. Alice, we know you're in there, Lucas called. Come out with your hands where we can see them. The scraping stopped. After a moment, Alice's trembling voice responded, I'm not armed, I'm coming out. But when she appeared in the doorway, she was holding a gun, her hands shaking so badly Lucas feared it might discharge accidentally. Put the weapon down, Alice, he commanded, his voice steady despite the tension. You don't want to make this worse. You don't understand, she said, tears streaming down her face. This was Daniel's. I came to hide it after I found him. Why hide the gun, Alice? Emily asked, her weapon still trained on the aide. If you didn't kill him, why take it from the scene? Because I panicked, Alice replied, her voice cracking. When I found him, I recognized the gun as his personal weapon, one he'd told me about but kept secret from most people. I knew if the police found an unregistered gun at the scene, it would raise all kinds of questions about Daniel's character and undermine everything he stood for. The media would focus on corrupt politician with illegal firearm instead of his work. So you contaminated a crime scene to protect his image? Lucas pressed. I wasn't thinking clearly, Alice admitted. I just knew Daniel had enemies who would use anything to discredit him and his cause. The gun was just sitting there on the floor near his hand. I made a terrible mistake. Put down the gun, and we can talk about that evidence, Lucas said, taking a half-step forward. Alice hesitated, then slowly placed the gun on the floor and kicked it toward them. It wasn't me. I loved him. He was like a brother to me. Emily secured the weapon while Lucas kept his eyes on Alice. Then tell us what really happened, all of it. Alice's shoulders slumped as the fight drained out of her. The compartment. Behind that wall panel. She pointed to a section of drywall that had been partially pried away. Daniel kept duplicates of everything there. He didn't trust digital storage for the most damning evidence. Lucas approached the wall, finding a hollow space behind the loose panel. Inside was a waterproof document case containing a USB drive, printed financial records, and photographs. This is what I came for, Alice said. Daniel told me if anything happened to him, I should retrieve this and take it to someone who wouldn't be corrupted. I was going to bring it to you tomorrow once I'd reviewed everything. Why not come to us immediately? Emily asked, holstering her weapon as Lucas examined the contents of the case. I was afraid, Alice admitted. Daniel was paranoid about how deep this conspiracy went. He wasn't sure which officers might be on Whitmore's payroll. She wiped away tears. And after I found his body, I wasn't thinking clearly. I just remembered our contingency plan and acted on instinct. Lucas flipped through the documents, finding detailed records of payments from Apex Development to various shell companies, including Price Solutions. Photos showed Mayor Whitmore meeting with developers in private, examining plans for the district that were far more extensive than the publicly presented versions. Let's bring this all to the station, Lucas said. You need to tell us everything, Alice, starting with why you were at Parker's office at 7:30 p.m. before you claimed to have found his body. Alice's eyes widened. You know about that? Security cameras don't lie, Emily replied, but people do. I didn't kill him, Alice insisted, her voice steadier now. I went to warn him. Sharon Price called me that afternoon, said she had evidence Daniel was about to be exposed. She wanted to meet him that night to save his career. It felt wrong. I tried calling him, but he wasn't answering, so I went to his office. And, Lucas prompted. He wasn't there, Alice said. I waited about 15 minutes, then left to check the campaign office. When I couldn't find him, I tried calling again. That's when I got a text from his phone saying he was meeting Sharon at 8 and would call me after. She closed her eyes briefly. I now realize that text probably wasn't from him. Why not tell us this before? Lucas asked. Because I went back later, around 9:30, and saw the gun on his desk. I panicked. It looked like a suicide, but I knew Daniel would never kill himself. I took the gun and the laptop, thinking I could find evidence of who had accessed his phone. I was trying to protect his legacy. Lucas and Emily exchanged glances. Let's continue this at the station, Lucas decided. Back at the station, Alice sat in an interview room, her posture defeated, but her eyes clear as she recounted the full story. Daniel discovered the corruption months ago, she explained. Mayor Whitmore was steering the development contracts to his friends, who were funneling money back to him through companies like the one owned by Sharon's brother. Meanwhile, the affordable housing that was supposed to be part of the project kept shrinking with each revision. Lucas leaned forward. And Sharon Price? What was her role in all this? She approached Daniel as an ally at first, Alice said bitterly. Said she wanted to expose the corruption. They started working together, gathering evidence. Then they became involved. Romantically, Emily clarified. Alice nodded. Daniel was vulnerable. His wife and he had been growing apart through the campaign. Sharon was smart, passionate about the same causes. But I began to suspect she was playing him. She would ask specific questions about his evidence, about what he knew and how he knew it. Then, mysteriously, those leads would disappear, or witnesses would suddenly refuse to talk. She was feeding information to Whitmore, Lucas concluded. Yes, Daniel eventually realized it too, especially after he discovered her brother's company was part of the money trail. He confronted her last week, threatened to expose their relationship and her duplicity publicly if she didn't come clean in her reporting. I think that's what sealed his fate. A knock at the door interrupted them. Reed entered, his expression triumphant. I've recovered the deleted security footage from City Hall, he announced. It was professionally wiped, but I managed to restore parts of it from backup servers. He placed his tablet on the table, queuing up a video. This is from the service entrance on the night of the murder. The footage showed Sharon Price entering at 8:15 p.m., checking her watch nervously. At 8:50 p.m., the same camera captured her leaving, her expression distressed, her hands visibly shaking. "It gets better," Reed said, advancing to another clip. 10 minutes after Sharon left, look who shows up. Mayor Whitmore appeared on screen, glancing furtively around before entering through the same door. 19 minutes later, he exited carrying what appeared to be a file folder and Parker's personal briefcase. Evidence he didn't want found. Emily muttered. "Let's bring this to the district attorney right away," Lucas said, standing. Reed hesitated. "There's one more thing. We tracked Sharon Price to the Bluebird Motel off Highway 16. Officer Grayson has eyes on her room, but reported another vehicle arriving just before I left, registered to James Price, her brother." Lucas checked his weapon. "Let's move. Emily, bring Alice's statement to the DA. Reed, send all this evidence to Catherine Chen's office directly. I'll handle Sharon." The Bluebird Motel was a dingy, single-story structure on the outskirts of town. Lucas parked beside Officer Grayson's unmarked car. "Room 11, Grayson reported. "A man entered about 20 minutes ago, matches James Price's description. Sounds like arguing inside." "Stay here and call for backup," Lucas instructed. "Watch the back in case they try to run." He approached the door cautiously, hearing raised voices within. A woman, presumably Sharon, was shouting, "You promised me protection. Now, look at this mess." Lucas knocked firmly. "Ravenswood Police. Open up." The voices fell silent. Lucas heard hurried movement, then a crash like breaking glass. "They're running," he called to Grayson, drawing his weapon and kicking in the door. The room was empty, the window shattered. Through it, Lucas could see two figures sprinting toward a car parked behind the motel. "Police, stop!" he shouted, racing through the room and climbing through the window. Sharon stumbled, giving Lucas the crucial seconds he needed to close the gap. James reached their car but hesitated when he saw his sister caught. That moment of indecision cost him as Grayson appeared from around the corner, weapon drawn. "Don't move," Grayson ordered. "Hands where I can see them." James raised his hands slowly, his expression a mixture of rage and resignation. Lucas cuffed Sharon, who had stopped struggling. "Sharon Price, you're under arrest for the murder of Daniel Parker." "You don't understand," she spat. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that. He was going to ruin everything. My career, the story, everything." "Tell it to the judge," Lucas replied, marching her toward his car. "You have the right to remain silent." Back at the station, Sharon sat across from Lucas in the interrogation room, her composure shattered. Gone was the confident journalist, replaced by a desperate woman facing a murder charge. "I didn't mean to kill him," she insisted, tears streaking her mascara. "It was an accident." "Start from the beginning," Lucas said, recording device running. "What happened that night?" Sharon took a shuddering breath. "I'd been working both sides, helping Daniel gather evidence while keeping Whitmore informed about how much Daniel knew. My plan was to wait until they destroyed each other, then publish the definitive account of the corruption and cover-up. It would have made my career." "But Parker figured out your game," Lucas prompted. "Yes, he found emails between me and Whitmore's people. He was furious, said he was going to expose me as a fraud who slept with sources for stories." Her voice hardened. "Everything I'd worked for would have been destroyed." "So you arranged to meet him that night?" Sharon nodded. "I dissolved his anxiety medication into his drink. I just wanted him incapacitated long enough to delete the emails and any evidence of our relationship from his computer, but he knew something was wrong as soon as he started feeling the effects." "And the gun?" "It was his," Sharon confirmed, matching Alice's account. "He kept it in his desk drawer. He pulled it out, accused me of betraying him. We struggled, and it went off." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I didn't mean for it to happen." "What about Whitmore?" Sharon's expression darkened. "I panicked and called him. He said he'd help me cover it up if I agreed to write a story blaming Parker for corruption in the development deal, making it look like he opposed it publicly while taking bribes privately. Whitmore came and said he'd make the evidence disappear." "And the ransacking of your apartment? The threatening message?" Whitmore's people, Sharon confirmed. He got suspicious when I didn't immediately publish the story we agreed on. Thought I might double-cross him with the real evidence I'd been gathering. Lucas leaned forward. We have the evidence from the model home, Sharon. The payments to your brother, the kickbacks to Whitmore, all of it. She closed her eyes briefly, resigned to her fate. District Attorney Catherine Chen personally oversaw Sharon's booking, her expression grave as Lucas presented the evidence, the security footage, the financial records, Sharon's confession, and the documents from Parker's hidden cache. You've done excellent work, Detective, Chen said, reviewing the files. This case has everything. Corruption, conspiracy, murder, cover-up. The press will have a field day. What about Whitmore? Lucas asked. I've already signed warrants for his arrest on charges of obstruction of justice, conspiracy after the fact, and corruption, Chen replied. Officers are picking him up as we speak. Lucas nodded, satisfaction mixing with wariness. And Alice Monroe? Obstruction and tampering with evidence, Chen said. But given the circumstances and her cooperation, I'll likely offer a plea deal with probation. When Lucas returned to the main office, Emily was waiting with coffee. It's over, she said, handing him a cup. The evidence from the model home was the final nail in Whitmore's coffin. His lawyer's already talking plea deal to avoid a public trial. The historic district? Lucas asked. The city council is meeting tomorrow to review the development plan. With Parker's evidence now public, they're expected to pass his version of the bill, the one with proper affordable housing protections. Lucas sipped his coffee, watching through the window as uniformed officers escorted Mayor Whitmore into the station. The politician's silver hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled, his expression a mixture of fury and disbelief as reporters shouted questions and cameras flashed. Quite a fall from grace, Emily remarked, following his gaze. Power corrupts, Lucas replied. Parker was trying to do the right thing, and it got him killed. But in the end, his insurance policy finished what he started. The television in the corner switched to breaking news. Footage of Whitmore's arrest juxtaposed with clips from the campaign rally just days earlier. The caption read, Mayor arrested in corruption scandal, linked to councilman's murder. Lucas thought of the families in the historic district who would now be able to stay in their homes. He thought of Alice Monroe, who had risked everything to protect her friend's legacy. He thought of Daniel Parker, whose death had ultimately accomplished what his life had been working toward. Justice rarely came without a price, but in the end, it came all the same.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel for new videos every week.